few introductions. Dale Chambers, Public Safety Administrator, St. Louis Area Regional Response System. That's with East West Gateway. And Matt Hunn, he's with the Army Corps of Engineers, Emergency Management. I guess I'll start by saying, what comes to your minds when we say natural disaster? What does that mean to you?
Well, for natural disasters, it's tornadoes, it's floods, but it could certainly be a windstorm, and in our region, an earthquake as well. And
how often do you think people are thinking about this kind of thing? Is the general public prepared?
We hope they're prepared. I mean, it's a topic that we talk about all the time, that we talk about with our families and friends, not just in the office. It's part of our daily efforts to do that.
Is it a tough sell, though? I mean, I'm curious if you got to go to the grocery store, pick up the kids, pay your bills. Is this really something that you feel like we are prepared as a region for?
I believe that we're underprepared as much as we try to prepare individually and as a region, whether that's a government agency or a nonprofit agency that supports all of those operations. Unfortunately, it's just not enough. We as a society have to change our culture and our culture of thinking, of being prepared. We're such a reactive culture that it doesn't happen to me. And instead we need to be on the, well, it will happen to me, and what can we do to prepare for that?
So when something does happen, we have a tornado like we've already had one this spring, it may seem like a reaction to those of us on the outside looking in, but it's not, I'm gathering. What happens when something hits the ground?
Well, when the disaster hits, and working for the Army Corps of Engineers as a federal agency, we're here to support the state and local communities. We're not down on the ground knocking on people's doors right off the bat, but we're definitely on the phone calling the state saying, hey, if you need our help, we're there, and in turn we provide that sort of support. But as far as when you start looking at tornadoes or flooding and everything else, everybody looks at it, well, in St. Louis, what's everybody do? They run to the grocery store and buy their bread and milk when they think they're going to get the warning.
We love our French toast.
We do. But that's not enough. I mean, it's got to be, where do we live at? And some of the, lately, in the last few weeks, we've heard what? We've heard the MSDs put the bid out on the radio. Know your zone, know your flood. So other communities are doing this, and we're all talking about it. How do we get that word out? How do we talk about that? And from my perspective, as I'm going long-winded here, is the part that we talk about a disaster hits. We talk about the tornadoes. We talk about Joplin. We talk about the 2011 flooding. The 2013 flood event was the 4th highest flood on record in St. Louis. How many people knew about it? I mean, there were a lot of agencies and a lot of people working to keep people safe. So you've got a very short window after that where everybody kind of goes, oh, gee, it's really bad. And then, okay, complacency takes over and they go back to their normal life.
We go out and pick up our weather radios right after a tornado, but not as time goes on, perhaps.
Well, it's important to keep them plugged in and batteries plugged in them. It's, keep them on and active and where you can use them. So just owning one is not going to serve any purpose if it's not on and useful.
Why is this important to the East-West Gateway? What's the stake?
Well, as part of the St. Louis urban area, it's a collaborative partnership. I mean, we all have to work together. A tornado doesn't just land on a single block in St. Louis City. It tends to want to cross county lines, cross the river into state lines. And so as a collaboration, we need to work together, and so that we're all on the same page. We're trained together, that we have equipment that's similar in the best ways we can, and plans that we can work together. Oftentimes states have their own laws, and you have to work behind the scenes to help change those laws or to adapt them so that they can work together more quickly.
And does this go beyond governments, beyond municipalities? Is there a role for business? Is there a role for, obviously we've talked about individuals, but other community organizations? Is that something that you guys try to coordinate with as well, or that you think needs to have a better coordination on this be in on this conversation?
Oh, they already are on this conversation, and I think that businesses do need to pick up a lot more be more interested in this philosophy, because so much of our infrastructure across the country is small business or large business in that for infrastructure, but certainly small business. It's the economics behind the country that needs to prepare for anything that's going to happen.
And that's a a mistake that a lot of people tend to take. You look at the 2011 flooding, and people looked at it and they said, well, gee, it's a bunch of farmers across South Dakota and Nebraska and Kansas and Missouri, and who cares? But when you start taking and looking at that, and I was working with FEMA at the time, trying to address some of the response efforts and the recovery efforts on that. And you start taking and you say, well, this school, and then this town, and then this county's impacted, and then my family took a vacation. Where'd we go? We went up north and along the Missouri River. So you started seeing all the impacts to our nation as a whole. So preparedness is where we make the opportunity, but it's preparing for that disaster that nobody wants to see. And as Dale was saying, we all work behind the scenes sometimes because people don't want to talk about it when the sun's shining and the weather's good. We need to prepare for that.
Last question, have you seen the attitudes shift at all in the right direction?
I think from a relationship standpoint, in 2008, the Corps of Engineers stood up the Interagency Levee Task Force, which was kind of a change in way of doing things. It forced other federal agencies to come together along with the state and these non-governmental organizations to come together at one group to address these problems. And we started talking because it's about the relationships that are formed when everything's good. When the sun's shining, we're talking to one another. And then when it hits and everything goes bad, then we can work together and provide for the public safety.